So Bellator 300 is going to be coming up this weekend, and it is a major card for Bellator. I mean, it's number 300, and they've got 4 championship fights on this card, 17 fights in total. The main card is very stacked. The prelims are pretty decent as well. I mean, this is going to be 100% a card to very much look forward to watching, but I'm excited for it. Before we do get into my predictions for every single fight on the card, you do have my BetUS link there, which you can get a 125% sign-up bonus, and then also my We Want Picks premium membership service 3-day free trial, which you can sign up using the code ARTEM. You get a 3-day free trial, cancel at any time using that code there for the We Want Picks premium membership. And now, with all that being said, let's get into my predictions for Bellator 300. So a Bellator card would not be a Bellator card without some Bellator prelims, which are genuinely just prelims there to fill up some space. And the first one is going to be Josh Hokit taking on Spencer Smith at heavyweight. I looked into Josh Hokit because I was wondering what this guy was all about, making his pro debut with no experience on a Bellator card, especially a big one too. Bellator 300, pretty big deal. And it turned out he played for the NFL for a couple of seasons, and he played college football, and he also wrestled in college as well, and I believe he became an All-American in wrestling in that college as well. And he's taking on Spencer Smith. Now, Spencer Smith, to my surprise, you can actually go out there and find his fights on YouTube, and he didn't really impress me too much. He seems to be a wrestler himself, but I've seen Spencer Smith get taken down, and I've seen Spencer Smith get KO'd. This lost to an injury. It seems like he kind of gassed out, and then he kind of fell over on his leg and injured his leg. It was a weird fight, but that's kind of what happened. I mean, Josh Hokit is minus 1,000. These guys are both making their pro debuts. I don't really know anything about Josh Hokit. I don't know how good he was as a wrestler, aside from those All-American honors. You can assume he was probably quite good, right? But anyway, that's kind of all I have to go off. I was able to watch tape on Spencer Smith. You can too. It's pretty easy to find on YouTube. I'm going to go with Josh Hokit, but minus 1,000 on a guy making his heavyweight debut. Anything can happen. Give me Hokit. Everyone's picking Hokit as well. Probably is the guy Bellator wants to win. And now we've got Lorrany Santos taking on Jackie Cataline. And this is an interesting matchup. Now, for Lorrany Santos, there is quite a bit of tape out there, but a lot of it was geo-blocked, and I did try and use a VPN to get around that and to watch some fights, but unfortunately it just didn't quite work out. So I was able to watch some Lorrany Santos fights, but not all Lorrany Santos fights. One of the fights I really wanted to watch was her win over Tainara Lisboa, but unfortunately I wasn't able to find it because now Tainara Lisboa is in the UFC, and she recently got a win in the UFC as well. But for Lorrany Santos, she is a striker. She throws a lot of shots down the middle. All of her punches seem to be straight punches, not too many hooks. And all of her kicks seem to be straight kicks as well. And what I mean by that is a lot of front kicks and not necessarily a lot of like roundhouse body kicks, head kicks, leg kicks, that sort of thing. She seems to kind of do everything straight down the middle. And Jackie Cataline, she's a wrestler that doesn't really wrestle too much. You can go out there and find a lot of her fights because she did fight for PFL, which is a pretty major promotion, but in those fights, she's got a wrestling base, but she doesn't really wrestle all that much. And even then, when she does try and go for takedowns, it's almost like she's going for like judo throws and trips and not necessarily really getting in there with a more traditional wrestling sort of style of takedown. So, very interesting from Cataline. Honestly, it's a good stylistic matchup for her, and she is a very slight underdog. Jackie Cataline is plus 110, Lorrany Santos is minus 140, but the problem is when I watch a lot of Jackie Cataline fights, she's losing on the feet, but she doesn't go for takedowns anyway, and I can't trust a girl that is going to probably have the wrestling advantage, but isn't going to choose to use it. So I'm going to go with Lorrany Santos. I'm going to go with her to win a decision, but this is another no-bet fight. I mean, it's relatively low-level women's MMA. Santos is probably the girl that they're trying to push. She's only 26 years old. Has a win over Tainara Lisboa, who's in the UFC. So give me Santos to win a decision in this matchup by keeping the fight on the feet. And now you've got Bryce Meredith taking on Miguel Peimbert. And Bryce Meredith is a really good prospect. You know, he's 4-0 in his pro career. He has fought for LFA and then recently got his debut win at Bellator by rear naked choke. Very good wrestling background for Meredith. You can look it up. It's absolutely ridiculous how good at wrestling he is. And it's transitioned over to MMA quite well. He's 4-0 and he's a minus 1,400 favorite over his opponent who is 2-2. It doesn't really take a genius to figure out who I'm going to pick. I'm going to go with Bryce Meredith. I'm going to go with Meredith to go out there and get the takedown and just kind of work from there. He's a very, very good fighter, and I do believe he's going to get it done by finish in this matchup. And now we've got Dmytrii Hrytsenko taking on Justin Montalvo. And this fight is very interesting, and it comes down to one pretty major thing. Can Dmytrii Hrytsenko keep this fight at range? Because Dmytrii Hrytsenko, he is well-rounded. He can wrestle, and he did wrestle a little bit against Daniel Skitizzi, but it wasn't like he was going out there and forcing the wrestling. It was more like Daniel Skitizzi would overthrow something and end up close, and then Hrytsenko would just kind of dip and try and take his back and try and get a takedown. He wasn't really forcing wrestling. He wasn't coming forward trying to shoot takedowns from across the octagon or across the cage in Bellator's sort of thing. But what he does for the most part is he fights from range and he throws a lot of kicks. And he's got pretty good kicks. He kicks the legs a lot. He kicks the head a lot. And of course he kicks the body as well. And what he is, he's a kickboxer that likes to fight from range. And where Justin Montalvo is a little bit different to him, is Montalvo is a boxer. And if Montalvo can go out there and close the distance over Dmytrii Hrytsenko, he will probably have a lot of success in this fight. Now, Montalvo, he's coming off a loss, but it's to Archie Colgan, who kind of does what Montalvo does, but quite a bit better. And he did lose that fight. It was a really, really good performance from Archie Colgan. Before that, he wasn't really fighting the best competition in the world. He's got a win over Charles Radke, which has aged pretty well, though, to be fair. But the thing about Montalvo is, if he can close the distance and if he can lure Hrytsenko into a brawl, which he probably could do, because there were moments in that fight where, in Daniel Skitizzi's fight against Hrytsenko, where Skitizzi was kind of crashing forward, and then Skitizzi would just like throw like 4 hooks, honestly, and then Hrytsenko would just stand in the pocket with him and throw hooks back. And there are quite a few moments in that fight where that happened. And if Justin Montalvo can get in close and use his boxing advantage, because he should have the boxing advantage, he should be able to hurt Hrytsenko and have success on the feet. And also, I think Montalvo is going to be a little bit bigger as well. This is going to be 160 pounds. In that matchup against Skitizzi, Hrytsenko looked quite slim. Like, he didn't look like he had a lot of natural strength to him. Obviously, technique does play a big factor, and he does have good technique. But Skitizzi in that fight as well, he kind of gassed out and almost looked like he'd given up in round 3. It was just a weird kind of performance from Skitizzi towards the end of the matchup. I'm going to go with the underdog here. I actually wasn't planning on picking the underdog, but I've talked myself into it. So that tells you that I'm not confident. But I like Montalvo, man. I think that Montalvo can go out there, close the distance, and land some good shots on Hrytsenko, win a decision, use his boxing advantage. It just comes down to, can Hrytsenko keep the fight at range? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say that Montalvo is going to be able to find close range jab and just kind of get forward, if that makes any sense whatsoever. Now, we can move on to Dovletdzhan Yagshimuradov taking on Maciej Rozanski. And Dovletdzhan Yagshimuradov has a very fun style for this weight class, because he does have that Sambo base. He does have that Sambo background. He did come through into Bellator with a couple of losses. I would say that he got KO'd, well, ground and pound TKO'd by Corey Anderson, and then he lost to Carl Albrechtsen. I think Carl Albrechtsen's pretty good, even though he has lost a couple of times in Bellator himself, but he's bounced back a couple of times to Carvalho and Julius Anglicus, who was a pretty good prospect at one point. Now, Yagshimuradov, he's got the Sambo base, he will strike, and he will wrestle. Maciej Rozanski's a very good grappler for this weight class. Most of his wins have come by submission, and they have come by submission relatively early into the fight, round 1 or round 2. And he does have a couple of KOs on his record as well, but the way that he wants to get the fight done is in his grappling and with his jiu-jitsu. I think that we can see Yagshimuradov go out there, stay safe on the feet, land a couple of good bombs on the feet, and also get takedowns and stay safe on top and avoid the submission attempts that Rozanski will be throwing up. So I'm going to go with Dovletdzhan Yagshimuradov. I'm going to pick him to win by decision in this matchup. I think that his Sambo style should be able to overpower the style of Maciej Rozanski. And now we can move on to this next fight, which is, dude, I don't even know what to do with this one, to be honest with you. The pick is Mukhamed Berkhamov, but I don't know how to feel about Herman Terrado, because this guy has not fought in 5 years. I don't necessarily understand what I'm meant to do with this sort of information. We've got a guy that hasn't fought for 5 years. I mean, what has he done for the last 5 years apart from participate in one grappling matchup? And he's fought for the last time 5 times in 8 years. And even then, if you look at Terrado, man, this guy's record is quite deceiving, because almost every single win that he has is just over some pretty bad competition. He does have some losses to some good fighters in there. He did fight Jake Shields. He did fight Magomed pretty early on in Magomedov's career, if you consider how many fights he's had now. But yeah, just a lot of these wins are over guys with no wins or losing records. And then he fought Jesse Taylor in a grappling matchup in 2020. Like, what is going on with Herman Terrado? And then Berkhamov, I mean, he's looked pretty bad since coming over to Bellator. He himself has been inactive 5 fights in 6 years. I mean, I don't know what to do with this matchup, to be honest with you guys. Mukhamed Berkhamov got KO'd by Lorenz Larkin twice, I believe. Yeah, it's one of those fights. I'm going to go with Berkhamov to win. But who knows what's going to happen in this fight. I mean, what's Terrado going to look like after 5 years away? I'm going to assume probably not as good as the Terrado that showed up for PFL 5 years ago. So yeah, give me Berkhamov to win this matchup in this fight. The next fight is going to be Sergio Cosio taking on Jesse Roberts in what is going to be Sergio Cosio's Bellator debut. And I thought that it was going to be a pretty good signing from Bellator, because Sergio Cosio had a lot of success over at Lux Fight League, is a defending champion over there, fought some pretty good guys, fought some not so great guys as well, but overall has fought some pretty good guys in his 34 fight long career. And one very interesting thing I noticed about Sergio Cosio is I'm pretty sure he has the Tapology logo tattooed on him. Maybe it means someone else, but you're going to have to tell me, what does this mean? To me, it looks like the Tapology logo. If you know what the Tapology logo looks like, it looks like that up there beside the name Tapology. But that is something interesting that I did notice about Sergio Cosio. But I guess something that pertains to the fight is Cosio seems to be a grappler. He is a wrestler, but his cardio is really disappointingly bad. I mean, especially when he took on Fernando Martinez, who was 42 years old. After the first round, he couldn't really get too many takedowns. He was able to get takedowns throughout the fight and did get a submission. But in round 2, he was tired. He was working for takedowns all round 1, all round 2 pretty much. And he was gassed. He had really not too much left to give. But thankfully, luckily for him, Martinez wasn't the best fighter in the world and also didn't have the best cardio in the world. But Jesse Roberts is a young, up-and-coming guy, 27 years old, undefeated, has fought some good guys, has fought for some fun promotions like XMMA. XMMA is a promotion I really like that is on the regional scene. They put on some fun cards. He was on one of their more recent ones, and he hasn't really fought, actually, the best guys, I should say. But he did fight a good opponent in XMMA. But this fighter here, Ronald Sago, was really small for the weight class. He was much smaller, but in that matchup, Roberts looked pretty good. He was switching stances quite a bit on the feet, and he was able to win the decision. It's going to come down to, can Cosio get the takedowns? And if he can't, he's going to be stuck on the feet with Jesse Roberts, who does have better cardio than him. And if Jesse Roberts keeps this fight on the feet, he should be able to win. And I am going to go with Jesse Roberts. I think that we're going to see Sergio Cosio go out there, try and get the takedowns. And if Roberts can keep it on the feet, which I think he can, he should be able to take over this fight, especially in round 2 and 3, if Cosio does slow down like he did a lot in his last fight. Now, that fight was 9 months ago, so maybe Cosio's made quite a few improvements since then, but I do believe Roberts should win a decision in this matchup over Sergio Cosio. And now we can move on up to the next one at 185 pounds. It's Ramiro Cotton versus Grant Neal. And for a while, Bellator was really building up Ramiro Cotton and Grant Neal. These guys are both Bellator prospects, guys that Bellator signed early in their careers and then tried to build up afterwards. Now, Ramiro Cotton recently lost to another very good fighter, and Dalton Roster got KO'd by him in round 3. But before that, he was beating a couple of decent fighters, you know, not the best guys in the world, but he's got a very good wrestling base, and he was looking like he could go on a pretty good run until he did get KO'd by Costa. And as for Grant Neal, the same sort of situation. He had a very close fight with Alex Polizzi, and since then he's had a couple of close fights, especially against Albrechtsen, which was a very close fight as well. And one of the judges obviously did score it to Albrechtsen because it was a split decision. Now, I am going to pick Grant Neal in this matchup. He should be able to have success coming down to 185 pounds. He should be able to defend the takedowns of Romero Costin, and Neil is a wrestler himself, so he might have success getting takedowns of his own and getting on top of Romero Costin and kind of dominating the fight from there. It will be interesting to see maybe what happens if Costin can go out there and can get the takedowns, but I think we should be able to see Grant Neal have success on the feet and also find success in his own striking as well. So give me Grant Neal to win this matchup here by decision. And now the next one is just another one of those Bellator prelims. Honestly, it is Bobby Cerrone III and Alberto Garcia. And Bobby Cerrone III is one of those guys that Bellator is trying to build up. He's 3-0 as a pro, had a successful amateur career. Alberto Garcia had a successful pro career and a successful amateur career, but that amateur career was almost 8 years ago. It was a long time ago. And before that, his last fight was about 10 years ago before then. He's recently fought a couple of times as a professional in MMA. Hasn't really fought the best guys. Cerrone III hasn't fought the best guys. And if he does beat Garcia, it probably would be his best win as a professional. But, I mean, I'm just going to go with Cerrone. It's one of those fights. I couldn't really find much on Alberto Garcia. And Cerrone III is obviously the guy Bellator's trying to build. So, I'm just going to pick him. Would I bet him at minus 550? Probably not. Now we can move on to a fight between two experienced fighters, and one of those fighters just happens to be a former UFC fighter in Kai Kamaka III, who has now gone on to have a lot of success over in Bellator. And Henry Corrales, though, is coming off a very, very big win, and he took on this guy in Usman Nurmagomedov, and Usman Nurmagomedov was 10-0 at the time, was a minus 550 favorite himself going into that matchup. And honestly, it was a very, very impressive performance from Henry Corrales. And it was almost like a big fraud check moment, as a lot of people would say. Because Usman Nurmagomedov, despite being able to get the takedowns at times, every time Corrales got taken down, he just stood right back up. And he defended a lot of takedowns. And on the feet, Nurmagomedov had absolutely nothing to give, aside from the typical boxing to closer distance to go and get the takedowns. And Usman Nurmagomedov was unable to get the takedown, so Corrales just beat him up on the feet. Now, in this matchup, though, Kai Kamaka III won't be shooting for takedowns against Henry Corrales. This very much probably will be a striking fight, and in a striking fight, I do like Kai Kamaka III to win. I picked him to win against Justin Gonzalez. I still do think that was a pretty good pick, even in hindsight, despite losing the close decision. And then he's gone on to beat a couple of decent guys. Adley Edwards was a very good prospect at the time. I mean, Adley Edwards come off a loss in his Bellator debut to Aaron Pico, and then he lost to Kai Kamaka III. But Adley Edwards is a good fighter that fought for ex-MMA himself. But yeah, I'm going to go Kai Kamaka III to win by decision in a very much striking matchup. The next fight booked for this card is Davion Franklin taking on Slim Trabelsi, but I'm not 100% sure if this fight is going to happen, because Slim Trabelsi, if you guys can remember, was meant to fight on the UFC. He was meant to take on Parker Porter at UFC 280, but he was withdrawn from that matchup due to contract issues. And it seems like he's having the same contract issues with Bellator again, because Fernand Lopez is his manager, and Lopez doesn't really have the best reputation right now, especially after Cedric Doumbé kind of went out there and exposed him. But I really don't want to talk about that too much in a breakdown video. But I am going to go with Trabelsi. Trabelsi is a very, very skilled fighter, and I think that Trabelsi should be able to win against Davion Franklin. It is a shame that he's chosen the manager that he has, but I don't think that should hold back Trabelsi's career too much here, unless he does get pulled from this fight like he did with the UFC. He's dominated a lot of the guys that he's fought so far. He is a wrestler. On the feet, he's pretty good. He's very long for the weight class, or at least compared to the guys that he's fought. He throws straight shots down the middle and then wrestles. Very dominant when he does wrestle. He was put in some bad spots against Nurmagomedov. Nurmagomedov had a pretty good rear naked choke attempt on him, but he was able to reverse out of that. If he can get Davion Franklin down, which I think he can, he should dominate this matchup. I'm going to go with Trabelsi, but honestly, I'm not 100% sure if this fight is even going to happen. Now, let's move on to a fight which I'm pretty confident is going to happen. Leah McCourt taking on Sarah McMahon. And I feel like this is a pretty good matchup for Sarah McMahon. I believe Sarah McMahon should go out there and win this matchup using her very, very good wrestling. Now, yes, I am aware that Sarah McMahon is 43 years old. She is absolutely not young at all, especially for the women's weight classes as well. She went out there and beat Arlene Blencow. That was a very good stylistic matchup for her, though, because Blencow is a striker. Before that, she beat Carol Rosa in the UFC. That's a pretty good win. She hasn't been super, super active, but now that she's in Bellator, I feel like maybe she's just got a little bit more motivation. And I think that we should be able to see Sarah McMahon go out there and take down Leah McCourt and just kind of win the fight in top position. I'm going to go with McCann to win by decision. And now we can move on. Alara Joanne taking on Jenna Bishop. Now, Jenna Bishop was a girl that I wasn't super sold on coming into Bellator, but she has proven herself to be quite good. She beat a 9-4 opponent recently, and before that was beating girls over in the LFA. She's taking on Alara Joanne, and it's a matchup where if Jenna Bishop can get this fight down to the ground and then she can use her grappling, she should be able to win. And I am going to go with that to happen. I think that Jenna Bishop does go out there, does take down Alara Joanne. I think that she can get her down to the ground and have success in her grappling. I'm going to go with Bishop to win this matchup by submission or decision. She is a grappler. That's what she does. And now we've got Liz Carmouche going to be defending the belt against Ilima-Lei McFarlane. And the odds are about what I expected. I think that Liz Carmouche really should be able to beat Ilima-Lei McFarlane. Now, I am very much aware that Liz Carmouche is almost 40 years old, but she hasn't really shown too many signs of slowing down, except for in her last fight, where Deanna Bennett was having a lot of success in that matchup, was having a lot of success in top control, but Bennett really slowed down towards the end there, and Carmouche was able to get the finish. Before that, she beat Juliana Velasquez twice. Very, very good wins, especially considering Velasquez has beaten Alara Joanne and kind of forced Alara Joanne to take on about a 1.5-year break after that loss. But yeah, Liz Carmouche. I mean, I always give Liz Carmouche her praises. I feel like she is kind of underrated as a pioneer of the sport. I mean, she is the fighter that did fight Ronda Rousey in the first ever female UFC fight. And she did beat Jessica Andrade after that as well. Had success of her own in UFC. But now that she's come over to Bellator, she's gone on an absolute tear. She's looked very, very good. I think this is one of those fights where I think that Liz Carmouche is going to have success in the grappling. Especially considering I don't think Ilima-Lei McFarlane won her fight. And I find it really, really hard to see how you can give that fight to Ilima-Lei McFarlane. I genuinely believe Kanao Watanabe won 2 rounds pretty clearly by doing more damage, and also she was able to out-grapple Ilima-Lei McFarlane, and not just out-grapple her and then do nothing, she was able to out-grapple her and then land damage of her own. I don't understand how McFarlane got that decision. The fight wasn't Hawaii, so that probably is why. But yeah, I think Liz Carmouche goes out there, has success in this matchup on the feet, can have success in the ground as well. I think she gets it done, especially in the grappling. So yeah, give me Liz Carmouche to win this matchup. I mean, she's been on an absolute tear recently. She might even be able to get a finish. And now the next matchup is going to be Ryan Bader taking on Linton Vassell, and it is a rematch from a very long time ago. I believe their first fight was in 2017, and since then, Linton Vassell, something has changed in this man, because he has turned almost 40 years old. He's 40 years old now, and he's gone on an absolute run. Yes, he did. He lost to Ryan Bader in that matchup, and in that matchup, Ryan Bader just completely out-wrestled him, dominated him with the wrestling, and then won by ground and pound in round number 2. But something's gone on, because now Linton Vassell has gone on an absolute tear. He lost a couple of times, beat Sergey Karatanov, who I believe headlined Eagle FC's first event in the USA, I believe. I'm pretty confident that's true, against Tyrone Spong. And then he beat Ronnie Marks, Tyrell Fortune, Tim Johnson, he knocked him out in round 1, and then Valentin Moldavsky, he knocked him out in round 1, and Valentin Moldavsky had a very, very good performance against Ryan Bader. Actually had Ryan Bader hurt at moments in that fight, and then come back recently to beat Steve Murray after losing to Vassell. So yes, Vassell is going to be dangerous on the feet, but the way that the 40-year-old, I mean, these guys are both 40. I mean, what is the heavyweight division, just in general? But Ryan Bader, he's still doing it, man. Ryan Bader is the wrestler in this matchup. He has been boxing quite a bit recently, which I do find quite interesting. But if Ryan Bader really, really wants to win this fight, he's going to wrestle, and he will wrestle against Vassell. That's exactly how he won the first time. It's how I think he's going to win the second time. I'm going to go with Ryan Bader to win this matchup. To use his wrestling, probably wins a decision in this fight unless we see Vassell really slow down. We could see Bader get a finish towards the end. He did beat Emelianenko in round 1. That was I feel like the Bellator, I completely forgot that this even happens. I feel like Bellator could have found Fedor a better retirement fight. Like Junior Dos Santos would have been more good. But anyway, he took Czech Congo to a decision as well. A matchup which he did use his wrestling. So even though I've been saying he's using his boxing, he is still wrestling. Give me Bader. I mean, Vassell winning by KO would be very interesting because then we'll probably get a trilogy. But yeah, give me Ryan Bader. I mean, he's dominated Vassell in the past using his wrestling. I'll be surprised if he doesn't go back to exactly what worked. Now we've got Cris Cyborg taking on Kat Zingano, and Cris Cyborg is coming back after her little escapade in boxing, which she did win a couple of boxing matchups, not really over the best boxers in the world, but she said that she wanted to go to boxing, and she went out there and she did her boxing, so good for Bellator for kind of letting her go out there and do that. Now it's interesting that one of the girls that Cris Cyborg did beat in boxing is one of the fighters that Kat Zingano beat most recently in Gabrielle Holloway. She beat her about 3 years ago. Cris Cyborg went out there and beat her in boxing. Very interesting kind of crossover there. I mean, it doesn't really take a genius to kind of think who I'm going to win here, who's going to win here. I'm going to go with Cris Cyborg, and I'm going to go with Cris Cyborg by KO as well. I mean, at this point, Kat Zingano is 41 years old herself. Cris Cyborg is 38 years old. We do know that Cyborg has struggled to make weight in the past, but that was at 135 and in the UFC. I think 145 is much more doable for her as well. Now, Cris Cyborg is getting older. She is showing some signs of slowing down, which is quite natural. But we're talking about a 41-year-old Kat Zingano here. Cyborg's going to be the better striker. She's been focusing on her boxing recently, which could be a bad thing because maybe she hasn't been focusing so much in her takedown defense, in her wrestling, in her grappling. But it could be also looked at a good thing because now Cris Cyborg kind of has a little bit of like pure boxing kind of experience recently where she can close the distance a little bit better and land her big shots. And I think she does do that. I think she knocks out Zingano in this fight. And now we can move on to the main event. It's going to be Usman Nurmagomedov taking on Brent Primus. And Usman Nurmagomedov is really, really skilled, man. Like, we're talking about a 25-year-old, 17-0 fighter. Now, to be fair, he did kind of get the classic Nurmagomedov treatment where he fought absolutely nobody and then got a title shot against Patricky Pitbull, which he looked really, really good in the feet in that one. And then he dominated Benson Henderson. We haven't seen Usman Nurmagomedov still fight the best that Bellator has to offer. And they've been relatively smart with the way that they've done the tournament because now Usman gets experience against fighters that he should be able to get past. He should be able to get past Brent Primus here. I mean, I think Usman has all the advantages. He's a wrestler. He's a grappler. But one thing that people probably don't talk enough about Usman Nurmagomedov is his striking is really, really good. Like, he's got very nice head kicks, very good kicks in general. He can fight from range, and he can wrestle and grapple as well. He kind of got absolutely everything that you want in a very talented fighter, and this is exactly what he is. I think that he can win this fight on the feet if he wanted to. I think he could win this fight in the grappling if he wanted to. He's taking on a 38-year-old Brent Primus who recently beat Mansour Barnawi, and I thought that was a really good win. But Mansour Barnawi just went out there and lost to JJ Wilson. So who knows what's up with Barnawi, man, honestly. But yeah, I think that we're going to see Usman Nurmagomedov go out there, out-wrestle, out-grapple Primus. But if he even chooses to, as I said, he could just outstrike Primus as well. Because he's a very, very good striker. Underrated striker, I would say. A lot of people talk about his wrestling. I'm going to go with Usman, not Umar. And I think Usman does get it done. He should finish. He should finish Primus. He's got 5 rounds to do it. Very good fighter is Usman. I would very much enjoy if the UFC would sign him maybe one day after Islam Makhachev moves on or something. But yeah, Usman, very good fighter. Let me know what you think in the comments below. This is a good card. I mean, Bellator has really pulled out all the stops for this. They've got their big names. They've got Usman Nurmagomedov, Cris Cyborg, Ryan Bader. Big name fighters. I mean, Ilima-Lei McFarlane's a pretty big name fighter. Leia McCourt's a pretty big name fighter as well. Kai Kamaka III has a little bit of a fan base. I mean, this is a good card. You got Josh Hokit as well. I'm sure maybe some NFL fans might know him. I don't really know too much about NFL. But anyway, let me know what you think in the comments below. This is a great card. Very much looking forward to it.